Hello there, this is Miriam, holistic life coach and mind body practitioner at Pain Outside the Box. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing the number one most common misunderstanding when it comes to mind body syndrome or TMS. It's a misunderstanding that I come across a lot over the internet and groups focused on TMS healing and recovery, and also amongst my own clients. And once you take away this misunderstanding, actually recovery becomes so much easier because you can proceed with a better foundation, let's say. So to get right to the point of this video, the number one misunderstanding when it comes to TMS is to think that symptoms, in order to qualify as a mind-body issue, as TMS, have to be just emotional. It's to think that if there is a physical symptom in the body, like a little bit of swelling, inflammation, really severe pain, spasms that can be visible, all sorts of physical manifestation, right? Most people think that because they can see or feel these very physical symptoms, then their issue, their condition must not be TMS. And I don't blame them because I know there's a lot of focus out there, obviously, on mind-body syndrome being emotional, because that's the root cause. The root cause is emotional. And I also know that in Sarno's books, Dr. Sarno says, my symptoms are not physical. He asks you to remind yourself that symptoms are not physical. And he also emphasizes the fact that a lot of conditions that qualify as TMS do not show up on imaging. So this is actually one of the issues behind this misunderstanding, because the way that Dr. John Sarno started doing his work was he started to observe people with chronic pain or symptoms, and he started to look at their imaging, their MRIs, and he realized that there was nothing wrong, or if there was any abnormality, any deformity, it was not the cause of their pain. And from that, he went on to analyzing other symptoms like fibromyalgia and stressing out that with fibromyalgia, there are, for example, no biological markers, right? That there is no test showing that something is wrong in the body with fibromyalgia. So the common understanding, especially in the beginning of TMS, was that there should be no physical manifestation, right? That if there is anything physical, like inflammation or, I don't know, a rash or something obvious, then the symptoms are not TMS. But this is actually not what Sarno meant. And also in his later books, such as, for example, The Divided Mind, he emphasizes how a lot of other conditions can qualify as mind-body syndrome. And to really help you understand this concept here, I'm just going to give you a really simple example. I want you to understand that TMS, mind-body syndrome, almost always has a physical manifestation. It's just that we have to keep in mind that the root cause, what actually triggers the physical manifestation, is actually emotional distress, repressed emotions, and so on. So the example I'm going to give here is something that everyone is familiar with. Let's say that you have a presentation to give, and at work, maybe at school, and you're really nervous about it, right? So you're not, in general, a fan of public speaking. If public speaking doesn't bother you, I want you to imagine that you are going to be put on the spot somewhere and you're going to be really uncomfortable in this situation, maybe an interview or whatever. And I want you to recall how your body has behaved at that time. Did you ever experience that increase in heartbeat, as if you could hear your heart beating like in your head? Maybe you also started to shake, or maybe you also had stomach symptoms, like you wanted to go to the toilet because you were so nervous, right? So I think everyone can relate to this, to the situation of being extremely nervous in a specific situation. Now, what happens here is that you are not imagining that increase in heart rate, right? To focus just on the heart, because there are many physiological symptoms happening when we're nervous like that. But to focus just on the heart, you're not imagining that increase in heart rate. It is physical and it is real. But the root cause, we can all agree, is actually up here. It's because we have perceived that situation as stressful, as threatening. We were insecure, right? So this is the same with other mind-body symptoms. If for some reason you did not perceive the situation as stressful at all, let's say you're always incredibly confident, or you just don't care what other people think, then you wouldn't have experienced that increase in heart rate. So we can all agree that the root cause there is emotional, that perception of threat, of being put on the spot, causing all these physiological symptoms, unpleasant physiological symptoms in the body. Now, that is usually an event that passes, right? After the speech or the interview or whatever, you get back to normal, right? You're like, oh, I shouldn't have been that nervous. Or you might be like, oh, I don't want to get into that situation again. Fine. But usually, your heart returns back to normal because the threat is over. The difference between that situation and mind-body syndrome, TMS, all the symptoms that qualify as TMS, is that the physiological response to the emotional threat is ongoing, because the emotional distress is ongoing for some reason, because you've been repressing emotions, because you're not aligned with your values, with your needs, you're neglecting yourself, so on and so forth. So many reasons that I also explore in other videos. But that is actually the only difference. In these situations, whether you're having back pain, dizziness, tinnitus, these are physical symptoms. There's something actually happening in the body, right? Just like your heart started to race, to beat faster, and you would have been able to monitor it on a heart rate monitor when you had to give that speech and you had that really nervous episode. Similarly, with these other symptoms, there is a physiological change going on in the body. Now, for a lot of symptoms, this could be a hormonal change, right? Because when we are in distress, our hormones get imbalanced, right? We are more prone to inflammation. We are more prone to holding tension in the body, which is actually, one of the main causes of a lot of pain, muscular pain and spasms. And God knows how many other physiological changes take place that we don't even know about, right? As a result of all this emotional distress, of all the dysregulation that is constantly ongoing. So why is this important to understand? It's important because a lot of people give up on TMS recovery because they insist or think that their symptoms are physical. They are not wrong. Their symptoms are physical. But what's important to remember is that the root cause is emotional. That emotions, nervous system dysregulation, when you're not in balance, essentially, can cause these very real physical symptoms. It's also important to remember because if you keep in mind that the physical symptoms are not due to an injury or structural abnormality, but are just due to this emotional distress, then you will be able to relate to these symptoms and to your body in a different way. Then you will be able to actually trust that your body can do better. You will not be avoiding so many physical activities or movements, for example, because you will know that your body can actually take these movements, it can handle these activities. You will know that walking, running, sitting down, whatever you might be avoiding or limiting is actually safe for you, because structurally, like in the body itself, there is nothing wrong. Even though there are physical changes happening that are causing your pain. And this helps immensely with recovery because when we stop the avoidance behavior, when we start to trust our body and build confidence in our body, we actually decrease the fear. And we also eliminate the conflict that we usually have in our mind when we first discover that we might have TMS. And that conflict is all about, on the one side, believing that the symptoms are emotional, and on the other hand, thinking structurally and behaving as if the symptoms are due to a solely physical issue. And I use the word solely here because they have a physical component, but they are not just due to this physical component. So most people go about recovery or try going about recovery with this conflict in their head, right? On the one hand, oh, my symptoms are emotional. On the other hand, through their everyday habits, behaviors, the way they restrict their life, the way they carry fear and dread when they think about resuming certain activities, they're actually telling themselves that they have a structural problem. And they are reinforcing certain negative expectations. And as we know, negative expectations can lead to more symptoms because they lead to more fear and stress, right? Understanding that TMS is both emotional and physical can take away so much confusion because, as we know, TMS, mind-body syndrome, can take so many different forms, right? It can manifest in so many different ways in different individuals. And there are various reasons for this. We can't understand all the reasons, but they do tend to manifest in places in the body which either really scare the person or that kind of make sense. So just to give an example, if you're an athlete, if you play tennis, then the TMS symptoms will tend to crop up in the arm or elbow because it makes sense to your logical brain for that part of the body to be injured. So the distraction, so to speak, takes place in the hand and arm. For you, for someone else, let's say who plays football, then the symptoms will be more likely to manifest in the back or in the legs or in the knee. So there are various layers to this, but we always have to remember when we get a symptom and we haven't injured ourselves, and we start looking into whether it could be TMS because maybe it's been a while, maybe because physical therapy isn't working, right? We must always remember that these symptoms are physical, but just because they're so physical, just because they're so painful, it does not mean that they do not qualify as mind-body syndrome. And today we're lucky to have so many questionnaires out there, so many assessments that help you evaluate whether or not your symptoms could be TMS. So I encourage you to take one of those assessments. I'll put a link to the one I have on my own website below this video. And once you have a case, if your symptoms qualify as mind-body syndrome according to these assessments, right? And if you have been, of course, cleared by your doctor of any serious issues or injuries or infections, then you can say like, hey, here I have a case according to this assessment, according to this evidence list I've written down. It seems that my symptoms are emotional. They coincide with emotional events in my life, with distressing events. Maybe I'm not listening to myself enough. If this is the case, don't let the physicality of the symptoms stop you from fully embracing a TMS-based approach, right? Don't be one of those people, because it's amazing how many conditions actually have a mind-body origin. These include also some illnesses, right, that are very physical. Some chronic conditions that are very debilitating and visibly physical, right? Like having, swelling in the body, rashes, whatever. So still, this doesn't mean that they don't have an emotional root cause. This is what to keep in mind, and it will take away so much confusion, right? As you can decide, as you can sit down and say, okay, there seems to be a case for me. So let me do the work and see what comes out of it, instead of getting lost, feeling scared of the physicality of the symptoms or trying to avoid the symptoms or manage them in some way. That's all from me for today. I hope you found this video helpful. And just one more thing before I go, I have an announcement to make today. In a couple of weeks, I'll be publishing my first mind-body book called The Pain Secret. And in this book, I help you uncover the secret triggers behind your pain. I explain why mind-body symptoms develop, why they persist. So it's not a very long book. I try to keep it short and simple. It's got action steps inside for you to follow, lots of exercises. So the aim behind it is actually to get you on the right track for recovery, to help you understand mind-body symptoms fully, and also to really help you understand yourself and why you might have developed chronic pain or symptoms. So it should go out in a couple of weeks. Check it out on Amazon. I'll post the link in the description once it's out. Again, it's called The Pain Secret: Unlocking the Mind-Body Connection to Recover from Chronic Pain and Symptoms. I'm very happy that publication is very near, because it's been around 2 years in the making, and I'm hoping that it will help contribute to the body of work in this field to help change people's lives, to help empower them, and to help get them out of unnecessary pain and symptoms. So that's all from me for today. Feel free to check it out, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.